an interesting place to live, especially weather-wise. Last Monday afternoon, it was in the mid-60s. I ate lunch on the porch. The sun was shining. The daffodils are all shooting up toward the sky. Bluebirds were at the feeder. Then I got up this morning. When I got up, the thermometer was reading a cold 23 degrees. What will happen to all the flower buds that are just forming? Can't wait for spring. But we can't control the weather, and it will happen. But that's also a metaphor for what can happen in our lives. For cold can kill any budding enthusiasm of living a life of service. Or we can become cold and frigid and simply weary of serving others as Rotarians. We talk more about what once was, instead of excitedly asking, what would happen if we...
The small business owners translate complex financial information. He's also founder of Inmate to Entrepreneurs, the longest running program of its kind that teaches people with criminal records how to start and grow their own business and potentially reduce recidivism. He's also, through his programs at Brian Hamilton Foundation, he helps people overcome obstacles to realize their greatest potential strength through business ownership. I'm delighted to have with us today Mr. Hamilton. We will conduct the rest of our meeting after Mr. Hamilton's remarks in the interest of time and in deference to what the speaker needs. So, Mr. Hamilton, the floor is yours.
Yes, hey, thank you so much, Ranjan, for that nice introduction. And John, that was a beautiful prayer. I could tell that you actually, that's not a stock prayer. That was very, very nice. And Jennifer, thank you for inviting me as well. Guys, I want to just talk briefly. I really enjoy questions more than me just lecturing at people. So I'll give you a little bit of an introduction to sort of what I do and maybe, I mean, roughly sort of our message here at the foundation. You know, I know it sounds hokey, but, you know, it happens to be true. I remember when I was in high school, I was an athlete. I played football and I get invited to these Rotary things for awards and stuff. I can hardly remember it now, but I, you know, you're 18 years old, and I was a little cynical, you know, it's like sort of the four principles and all this stuff. I kind of just, you know, I was just a jock, you know, I don't know, a stupid jock, high school kid. And I would listen to the things that Rotary was doing. And not that I was cynical, but I just sort of was more dismissive. But I want to say that I really love being part of the Rotary team because I do this, Charlie and I do this all over the place because I really love what you stand for. And I mean that because as you guys know, as you become an adult, those principles that you guys stand for are not BS. You know, that's stuff that you carry through your life and hopefully you manifest it in your life. It makes a difference in your life, but also in the lives of the people you touch. And really, I really mean that. So that's a good segue into maybe my next point. You know, when I was growing up, like we didn't have money and that's, I'm not going to get into all of it because I want to get some of your questions, but that's not a euphemism. I mean, I really grew up in a lot of scarcity. It's like, I guess I don't look that way or anything anymore in my background. You know, I don't really know, but I had a lot of that. And as a little kid, you know, I would read these books because I couldn't see wealth around me or prosperity. It just wasn't there. And my father worked part-time jobs and all that, eventually got us out of the neighborhood and all that. But the point is, I used to read about our country. And I believe that stuff. It's amazing to me. I'm 57 years old, but I believed it. And like during that time, that was incredibly formative, the way our country was started. I know it sounds like patriotic babble, but I believed it. About the idea that anybody in our country could start out from nothing and make something of themselves. My goodness, if you ever told me when I was a kid that couldn't happen, I just would have quit, you know? And I believe that. And how does that happen? Well, it happens through the free enterprise system. There's no doubt about it. There is no question about it. Capitalism, the free enterprise system, they're not perfect. Absolutely not. But name a better system for helping to bring people up. And you can't. Over the last 3,000 years, you're not going to be able to do that. So capitalism and free enterprise it's absolutely fundamental to bringing people up. And we've got to bring these principles to more people, because I think about the people, some of the people I grew up with, not necessarily my family, but in the neighborhood and all that, they weren't even introduced to these things. So we got to teach people about prosperity, teach people how to bring themselves up, teach people that no matter how they're born, they can come up. Now, on that point, I wanted to tie this back to Rotary. I want to tie it back to your mission and what you already know. I'm the preacher preaching to the choir, or to whatever, the congregation, however that goes. But in a capitalist system, in the free enterprise system, we can't let it run amok. We can't just say, well, capitalism is going to solve everything. It's going to solve poverty. That's not true. That is absolutely not true. There are people in our economic system who aren't even introduced to it. So how are they going to rise up? They don't even know the principles. That's what our foundation does. Try to teach entrepreneurship, try to help people move up. But my point is this, and here I go. I'm the minister to the congregation, the priest to the parish here. We cannot just say that the capitalist system will solve everything. For example, poverty. We can't say that. We've got to serve people. Even Adam Smith, who wrote Wealth of Nations, even Adam Smith, the big enterprise guy, right? Wealth of Nations, free enterprise is going to, is a wonderful system. Before that, he wrote a book called Moral Sentiments. And he talked about, in order for the system to work, you need morality in society. You need people doing the right thing. They're not perfect. I'm not perfect, right? Ranjit's perfect. Is he perfect? I don't know. Probably not, right? But nobody's perfect, right? But we need good people doing good things in the system on which we build free enterprise. And that's why I love Rotary. And I think that message needs to get out. And it's not a political message. Why does everything have to become politics? Unbelievable. I mean, it's so divisive. Geez, even when you think you're right, you're wrong, right? I mean, it's just divisive. But these principles of giving back to your community, got to do it. I'll mention one other thing. I think the intro was good and true, by the way. We help people start businesses. I've helped, there's no I here, but we've helped hundreds, thousands probably of people start business who have been incarcerated, in prison. Some of you probably know that. That's what I'm all about. Let's help people manifest the real promise of free enterprise is entrepreneurship. Let's help them manifest that. That's what I've been teaching people about. And I guess that's where I would end. I don't want to end on a morose note, but I'm really worried about small businesses today. I mean, people talk about it in platitudes, like, oh yeah, the small business person, the small business with COVID and all this mess we're in right now. I mean, I think it's possible that really, I studied this stuff. This is what I did for 20 years, that we could lose 5 million businesses in this country. I mean, we only got 26 million businesses. We might lose 5 to 10 million small businesses. So my fear right now, and what we're trying to act on, is we need more people starting businesses, not fewer. I graduated from college 1985, and at that time, probably about 15, 17% people own businesses. You know what it is right now? Even though it's popular to be an entrepreneur right now, it's about 9%. Our fathers, a lot of our fathers or grandfathers, definitely very different. About 50% of people were entrepreneurs then. And why is that important? It's really important. Who creates jobs in this country? Really? I mean, it's so obvious. I mean, do the math. The data is very, very clear. Who creates jobs? Small businesses. About 70% of new jobs are created by small business. Where does the innovation come from? No disrespect to IBM. I don't know. I mean, they probably come up with some stuff, but it's small businesses. It's entrepreneurial businesses, right? And by the way, on that last note, it's true. I did start SageWorks, and it's true that I did sell that company. But I started my career in the coin laundromat business, actually, when I was a kid. My father, I graduated from Duke, and he's like, "What are you going to do?" I said, "Coin laundry." I think he finally got the idea. My kid's crazy, right? So I got out of Duke and I started coin laundromat. So it's not just the high-tech flyers, but the Main Street businesses we have to help. But anyway, it's an honor being here. I talked too long as usual. And what I would love to do is for you guys just to ask me questions or make comments or, anything. Let's just get some juice going. Let's talk.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brian. You're doing remarkable work, and really this is an interesting topic. But like you said, looking forward to some questions. Kevin, do you have a question? Go ahead.
Yes, Brian, thanks for being here today. Can you give us just a little bit of background about what your foundation does, what your metrics are, how many people
Yeah.
you've helped, what your emphasis is on? I know you've got the
Yeah.
inmate program, but
Yeah.
just give us an overview of the foundation in general
Yeah.
and what your
Thanks.
success looks like.
And you're Kevin, right? Kevin?
Yes.
I can't see my screen anymore. I need my glasses, but I'm vain, so I don't put my glasses on. But yeah, well, I mean, really, number of businesses started. We teach people how to start businesses. All of our programs are free. By the way, Charlie, the CEO of our foundation's here, and he's always getting on me. I always forget to promote our organization, but it's brianhamilton.org. We've got online courses, Starter U. It's all free. We don't charge anything. We've got mentors, and we teach people hand-to-hand combat, Kevin, how to start businesses. I started that journey, by the way, with a fellow, Reverend Robert Harris, around teaching inmate. I don't like calling them inmates. We just call them people who have been in prison how to start businesses. But really, we go to the military, we go to the kids now, and how to start businesses. So, Kevin, I'm not answering your question. Number of businesses started, number of people that we've touched, number of people have completed our courses. I'm an entrepreneur, so we're very metric driven, and things like that. Basically, I don't know if you're trying to get there diplomatically, but like in the Inmates to Entrepreneurs program, maybe like for every 10 people who start the course, we'll get about 6.5, 7 people who graduate, and of that, we'll probably get half of them to start businesses. So I always tell the guys, like we're shooting, we're not shooting foul shots here. We're playing baseball. So our batting average maybe 1 out of 3. But in entrepreneurship, I think it's pretty good.
Good. Any other questions?
Hey,
Can I?
I'm sorry, Quanta, please go ahead.
Oh,
Go ahead.
thank you. Yesterday I saw something on PBS about the lack of skilled people because most of the time people want to get college degree, but then
Yes.
society needs people that can be, uh, for instance, builders or
Yeah.
plumbers,
Yeah.
electricians, and that they make very good money, like
Yeah.
six-figure income. But the guy said that he hires them as apprentice for
Right.
$15, and then once they learn and they get their certification, they can make $75 an hour. And do you have something like that in this area? This was in Oregon, I think.
Yeah. Well, do I pronounce that? Is that Quanta? Is that correct, roughly? Or
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
all right, Quanta, that you're trying to blow up my meeting here, get me too amped up. I want to say something. I'm goofing around about that. I'm kidding with you, but I want to say something about that. My father never graduated from high school. He eventually got a GED. I was the first person in my family to go to college. Charlie, I say this all the time, so often I don't even believe it anymore, but it's true. I got 46 cousins, and I'm the first guy in my family to go to college. The point is this. I want to get to your point. I don't know why it happened. I really don't know why this happened in society. I really don't understand. But why is it that people think that people don't exist unless they have college degrees? It's almost like a smarty pants attitude. Like, you're not a real human being unless you have a college degree. I think, Quanta, to get to your point, I think that's part of the psychology that we have to fight against. You know what I mean? Like, why is that? Like, to your point, show me a good plumber, an electrician, or somebody they like to work with their hands. I'm working with a nice kid now, RJ, who's starting a business and had been in prison, whatever, but he wants to do tile work. Those are incredibly good professions to make money from. So, what is the cause of that? I think there's a cause somehow in our generation, post World War II people. We got sold a bill of goods that you can't exist unless you go to college. You don't even count, right? Isn't this true? It is kind of true, right? So I understand, and I'm not saying don't go to college, right? But I'm saying it might not be for everybody. With regard to your specific question on our foundation, we help people start businesses. So we assume they know how to do tile work or cut a lawn or something like that. But I think you're bringing up a great point. You really are bringing up a great point. these guys are all in Charlotte. I mean, I'm in Raleigh, but you can't even get a decent tradesperson. It's right. You get an electrician out to your house. It's 3 weeks later. You're in the dark. I mean, you can't get these tradespeople. So you're right. There's 6-figure incomes. There's good incomes with healthcare. There's so much opportunity around the trades. And I just think it's our generation. We were different from our parents. Maybe some ways good, maybe not always great. But the idea that if you don't go to college, somehow you don't exist. I think that's the problem. The cure is just to talk about it.
Excellent. Any other questions?
Brian, Dave Miller, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yep, Dave. Yep.
Brian, you've mentioned a couple of types of businesses, but are there 3 or 4 or 5 main types of businesses that people are starting now?
Good question, Dave. Yeah. Anything you can, that's a good question. Thank you. Anything you can do with your hands. These don't cost you anything, right? This doesn't cost you anything. So it could be car detailing, it could be cleaning homes, it could be cutting lawns, it could be doing tree work, landscaping, anything like that, like where you can do the work. Now, if you come with a technical skill like tiling, well, now you're really off to the races. But we believe in starting small businesses that require very, very little capital. And when I say little, by the way, I'm talking like $300. I'm not talking about $3,000. Most people don't have that. So those are the types of businesses that we focus on. Thank you for that question, by the way, because it's very important. You can't give someone a dream and no path to the dream. So if we're starting businesses that require $10,000, forget it. Most people can't do that.
Right.
It's a good point. Yeah, you're welcome.
Brian?
Go ahead, Jenny.
What is the percentage of minorities that end up starting businesses after they've taken your courses?
Yeah. You know, eventually I will answer these questions, but I tend to go on a little bit, I tend to go on a little bit of a rigmarole in the beginning. And I'm not lecturing to you. I just want to be clear. I really appreciate your question. Well, let me actually answer it, and then I'll give you the backdrop. So I would say that in the Inmates to Entrepreneurs program, that program, maybe about 2/3 of the people there are, quote, of color. And then 1/3 not. Now, I want to mention something about that because you got all kinds of people in prison, right? There's not just people of color in prison. So there's kind of a stereotype that we have to work against, right? We really do, because that could be not good for anybody, right? But I'd say maybe 2/3 minority, 1/3 non-minority. But I will say they all, not all, but statistically, they all share things in common, i.e. their childhoods statistically have really stunk real bad. So you look at these kids, these people statistically when they were young, like me, I talk, look at all the billionaires, people, we always want to think like, I'm self-made, it was me and rags to riches, and isn't Brian terrific? I had a father who guided me. I mean, look, you give me a one parent who cares and will guide somebody, they're not poor. So even though I was around poverty, I was not poor because I had a father, you know what I mean? So, but most of the people we work with have had very severe childhood adverse experiences. There's drugs in the neighborhood, maybe violence at home. Mom and dad don't know how to communicate that well. Just fights and stuff. And just a lot of junk. That's why my father worked so hard to get me out of that neighborhood. But by the time I was 10, I got out of it. But I'd say maybe 2/3, quote, minority, and then 1/3 not minority. But the beautiful thing about what we do, it's really wonderful, right? Who can argue with this? It doesn't matter what the race is. It doesn't matter what the religion is. It doesn't matter. All we're doing is making stuff available to people that we all know works, But that's a good question. Thank you.
Excellent. Any other questions? I had a quick question. What about capital? You talked about capital. Do you partner up with organizations that provide the seed capital for?
No. Nope.
Okay.
We don't believe in that. I don't know. Okay. We do not believe it. So we have nothing against capital, right? But if you give me a person and you say, look, you're at point A and I want to get you to point B. I don't want point C in between those 2 points, and that's called capital. So we go very low capital, because the truth is we're dealing with a lot of people who don't have credit. They don't have the best communication skills all the time. So we want to take capital off. That's why we go low capital. Nothing against getting capital, nothing against it. I've started businesses with capital and without capital. I've done it all over the place, landscaping and the whole thing. But we try to keep capital out of the equation because it's very hard to get capital for a new business because it's not proven. But the question is excellent. And, we get sometimes pushed to do that, but then now all of a sudden we got people doing business plans instead of cutting a couple of lawns. Let's just cut a couple of lawns. Do that for $100. You know what I mean?
Right. And the second question is, what do you think about the school system? Because I think the statistic is 80% of kids who enter the 9th grade will not finish a 4-year college. So why are we, going back to Quanta's point, why are we building a system which doesn't serve people when they come out of 12th grade? I mean, why are we not building CNC lathes? I mean, what is it the same thing that you talked about, this pushback that everybody needs a college degree, and if you're not pushing them to that, you're setting them up for failure. So
yeah, well, look, I don't want to dive in too much, but I think what it looks a theory. I don't know what's it worth. I don't know what this is worth. But I think in the 70s, 80s, we got so amped up about competing with the Japanese. Remember that? The Japanese are wonderful. They do everything great. They're better people. They make more money. They're better looking. They got better cars. And so we tried to superimpose Japanese society on American society. We're entrepreneurs, right? We got corporations. There's nothing wrong with that. My father worked in a factory for 43 years. Nothing wrong with it, right? But I think that psychology developed, and we just got to unbend that psychology. Look at North Carolina. We got 58 community colleges. Charlie, you and I go over there this weekend and learn how to get a license and be an electrician or something like that, to Quanta's point. But I just think it's the psychology. And I think that, honestly, what's behind that? Look, I went to college and I went to Duke, the Duke, and my goodness, I don't know if any of you have been to the West Campus. My goodness, I thought I landed in England. You ever been there? It's unbelievable, right? I mean, look, it was unbelievable. The buildings, it was so intimidating to me. I've done the whole thing, but I really think it's the smarty pants, it's an attitude, and we got to change the attitude. I don't know how to do that.
Right. Kevin, go ahead.
Just one quick question, Brian. Do you have one success story that you like to point to as an example of what your program can do?
Kevin is, by the way, guys, Kevin is my plant. Kevin's my plant. If you invited him to plant these great questions, and I'll end on that, because that's a beautiful thing. It really is. My favorite story is Scott Jennings, and Scott never minds me mentioning his name anymore. I used to just do it anyway, not even tell him. But Scott Jennings, I met him in prison, apparently. I don't remember it. I actually don't remember meeting him. I really don't. And it was about 10, 15 years ago. I met him in prison. I was teaching, how to start a business, whatever. Scott got out and then started a business, but then approached me about my program, right? And said, hey, I want to get involved. I'm like, and he was really amped up. He's super high energy, right? He's unbelievable, right? I want to get involved as a volunteer. And then he started working with us, right? And now he's on our board of directors at Inmates to Entrepreneurs. So to me, I love that story. He puts fitness equipment together, like gyms and all that, right? That's what he does. And I love that story because he was in prison and then got out and started volunteering, started a business, and now he's on our board. I love Scott's story. I mean, I really do. He did a great job. He spoke up at Washington or New York in front of all Congress or something like that about his story. I was at the White House with Scott, and it's just a beautiful thing.
Yeah, and I think that's the measure of success, is when you can share stories like that, and when you can share with groups like us that you are truly making a difference in people's lives, and that these people are going on to do some really good and positive things.
And let's turn it back on you guys, okay? Let's turn it back on. And by the way, I apologize. I'm from Connecticut. Everybody's a guy. I apologize. But let's turn it back on you guys. That's what I love about Rotary, is that You guys are already doing this stuff, right? I mean, you're already giving back and you affect one life. I mean, how many lives do we need to affect when we're on Earth, really? If you do 2 or 3, wow, that's a lot, right? So every single individual, right? That's what I always think. We got 5,000, we got this. We get so caught in too many numbers. He's a billionaire and that person's in Hollywood and this and that. If you can just affect anybody, what a difference that makes.
Absolutely. And we'll end on that note to be respectful of your of our schedule. And thank you, Brian, for being here. That was an excellent discussion, an excellent project, and excellent work that you're doing. And look forward to hearing more about it in the future.
Well, hopefully I'll be able to see you guys in person at some point. So take care.
Absolutely. We look forward to that.
Thank you, guys.
Absolutely. Thank you. And now we shall move back to business portion of our meeting. Do we have any